Do we want to talk about the G2 Misfits series, which was the other one that happened this week? Unfortunately, I feel like there's
first.
I feel like there's not a lot to say here, but
you've got to say something. It was like fucking Perk, self-made Alfari. Like, that's the problem on paper. It was wild, wasn't it? They were fucking trashing the game, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's worth saying is that I think right now it's really hard to make an argument for anyone other than Broken Blade being the best in LEC. I think like you can maybe say Odo Amnight, actually. That's fair.
Yeah, they're the
I
two.
think Odo
They're
Amnight versus Broken Blade is going to be super interesting.
Yes.
But like when we came into like looking at the predictions, we like went like down and said like, oh, I think Alfari will be able to hold Broken Blade, no problem. He didn't. He absolutely didn't. Broken Blade was so good in that series. And obviously, like
Alfari looked a bit shocked, dude. He looked a bit mentally rattled because normally the thing I appreciate about him is like he should actually play properly when like people are ahead. Or, like, he looked like he just Shane fed a bunch. That was depressing.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. I mean, I think Broken Blade was way better. I think one thing that we did kind of predict was that I think bot lane was going to be better for Vitality, and I think they were. I think Kazi Lavrov were like way better.
Yeah. Aside from Lavrov not know where fucking R is on Renata, but we'll ignore that for now, Lavrov. Whatever, mate. We'll forget about that one for now.
That was a thing. Then the two main things that I honestly saw for Vitality. And there's like a bigger discussion here, especially about like the whole scrim debate thing.
Yes.
Number one was like Perks making some really big blunders, execution blunders, like consistently big execution blunders, like on the Akali, for example, was rough. The second thing I saw was honestly like I think Vitality were favored in game 3 for sure. Like game 3 was theirs, and I think there might have been another game where they were okay in, but like good God, their dragon control. Good God, it was awful. Like they just. Every time the enemies were in a position to get like third or fourth, or they were in a position to get third or fourth dragon, like they would get to like the mid wave and be like, okay, guys, we're going to contest. Nah. Or they would just not be there on time, or they would just be like randomly doing something else, pushing out a side lane somewhere. But like, it was really rough to watch. It was really rough to watch. And then even in the fights, like there's a bunch of fight examples where they have like they win the fight around dragon. This is in the Akali game as well. They win the fight around dragon, and then they literally chase to the enemies like T2, and they just all die under the T2 instead of turning around and taking the dragon. And there were so many examples of this where they just chose not to play for an objective, or they just chose to like do random stuff. And like honestly, to me, that reeks of a team that just isn't well drilled. I mean, I know that they were saying that they were like doing super well in scrims and they were stomping in scrims, and what that sounds like to me is that they're literally just like smashing people into the floor in like 10 minutes and the game's getting FF'd, and they're not creating like any positive practice habits whatsoever, because like they literally just look super I don't know what the opposite of a well-oiled machine is, like infer what you want, but they literally just look like they're not used to playing competitive League of Legends.
I think this team is uncoachable. That's what I think. And unless one of the players is, unless they pull a T1 where Faker just becomes the coach of the team and does a good job, which is I think hard to do, especially because at least on T1, you have this super veteran player in Faker who can kind of be the de facto leader role, whereas you have multiple very veteran players on this roster who might be kind of conflicting over who might be the de facto coach within this roster. But what's puzzling to me is that a lot of the criticism that we could have leveled against Vitality for most of the split was that their early game looked incredibly clueless, and they kind of came together, at least in late game team fights in the games that they were winning. And the only complete game that I feel like I've seen in the last few weeks was game 5 of their previous series up against Excel. And then now in this series, it looked like their early game was better, but as you say, their mid to late game objective control was horrific. And they were over pursuing frequently. So weirdly, I feel like they had a very different problem in the playoffs than they had, or in this series, I should say, than I felt that they had for a lot of the season.
Yeah, it was really strange to watch. Really strange to watch, especially because like that's kind of supposed to be we talked a lot about intangibles previously. That's kind of the area that Perks is supposed to deliver in to this team, you know? And my understanding as well from like talking to people is that like he's kind of like filling the coach position that like you mentioned, the same as like Faker does, right? I don't know how Perks does it, right? But like in theory, that's like his role on the team, because it's not like they have a big leadership figure from the coaching staff, which like can be fine, you know, if you have enough leadership figures in the game, and Perks is like supposed to be that. But it's
I mean,
really...
T1 fired their coaches, let Faker run the team last year, and it's worked out pretty fucking well.
Yeah, good for them. Good for them. And then yeah, like it's so weird that like that is your leadership figure, and that is the failure that we see, both from him individually and from the team on like a macro sense, because that was always Perks' strength, right? That was always Perks' strength. Like,
it's a very weird problem they're having.
And like he was always like the intelligent mid laner, and his teams were always the most intelligent teams. So like, I think there has to be some like huge clash and like a huge lack of identity with how they actually want to play the game.
Yes.
I'll tell you an obvious problem. Their jungler and support are the opposite of what I would describe as intelligent jungler and supporters, mate. They're just they're people with hands. That's it. Like, mate, self-made. What the fuck was he doing this year? Like, just redo the whole year, mate. It's over for you. Just forget about it. Go next. Next split for you, mate. It's fucking atrocious. And I love the way, by the way, because he's not a fucking pop-off player anymore. Jankos just like is the sleeper OP every bloody year. Everyone tells me he's washed and, you know, the GT have got to get rid of him now. And at the end of every bloody playoffs, he just remains like the fucking crypt keeper, like guarding the door to the championship for all these fucking up-and-coming players. Like, just spoil it. If you're Polish and you're a jungler, you've got way to go before you overtake Jankos, mate. There's loads of you, but every year he takes care of all. It's fucking sick. I just love it. Because what I love is all the rest of them are like ego players. They're all trying to play the fucking pop-off, the Lacy and the Diana. They're all trying to get all the fucking kills. You'd never know what he does in the game because he does everything for his team, you idiots. If people don't know, Jankos is a player where every teammate you talk to of his is like, his comms are great. He's always in the right position. He can sacrifice for the team when he needs to, sacrifice in draft. Like, the guy's just the consummate professional jungler, and you see what you can do. Like, bear in mind, this is actually something of a scuffed G2 team. Like, they don't get the power levels are that great. But you have a player like that, he just fucking fills in holes around your team. I'd love to have that guy on my team, mate. One of my instant picks if I was a coach, of course.
Yep, intangibles.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.